hang on 1 minute.
I'm sorry! I don't know!
Davey! I told you you can't scare him away.
He's back!
You're going to take your own medicine, you see.
Awesome.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How are you?
Hello.
Is this the first sitting? Are we going to have to do another sitting after this?
No, this is it.
All right.
Well, yeah, I know. This is like standing room, sitting room. Every little crevice, nook, and cranny is filled with people here to see you.
It's very nice. I'm very honored. Very honored.
So, I mean, we're all here to talk about Peter Davison, you know, the star of All Creatures Great and Small. Law and Order UK. And, you know, a small little sci-fi show called The Tomorrow People.
I like that one.
Or you might be here to see him because of another show he was on called Doctor Who.
Oh, that's it. Oh.
Okay.
Come on, that day. There are questions.
Yes, questions. So, okay, we're going to get this out of the gate, off the bat, because I know everybody's dying to hear this question asked. What do you know about the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who?
This is what I want to get on video. Hang on a minute.
Oh, you'll be re-asking?
Yeah, no, what you do, yeah, re-ask it.
Okay, let's just get this out of the way first. You know, I think this is the burning question on everybody's mind right now. What can you and what do you know about the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who?
Absolutely nothing. But I know that I was going to be asked this question over and over again. I honestly don't know very much. I know that Stephen Moffat will have something planned. I don't think it will, to be honest with you, involve the older Doctors. Certainly in their present form, because of course we're meant to look exactly as we did when we left the TARDIS. And none of us really do. Some of us aren't here anymore at all, and others of us have weathered less well than others. I don't know where I put myself in that category. I'm not going to make that decision. I think probably will be featured somewhere, but I should think it's probably something footage lifted from older Doctor stories. I don't know. We are doing some Big Finish audios, which to celebrate the 50th anniversary. I know that there are events planned by the BBC. I've got a meeting with the head of the BBC in Wales, where Doctor Who is made when I get back, to go through various things the BBC have got planned. But I don't think she's going to offer me a part in the 50th anniversary special. I might be wrong.
I hope you're wrong.
You know, and I did these, and I'm going to say this only as a way of forcing myself to do this, but I did a couple of videos, little home videos, when I missed out on going to a convention in California. Little 5-minute videos about common little comic things. And I decided that if we weren't going to be involved in the 50th anniversary special, that I would get together with Colin and Sylvester and make our own little 50th anniversary Doctor Who special. And if we can possibly manage it, we're going to get into the 50th anniversary special, whether we're invited or not. So, keep an eye open for that. It will require the cooperation of various people, not least the producer of Doctor Who of course I have in my pocket. You know.
Like right now?
Yeah. Phone a friend. We share a name, we share children with virtually the same names, so I can lean on him a bit, and certain other people connected with the new series of Doctor Who I can lean on, not least my son-in-law. So, so I'm hoping to make something happen that's just a bit of fun. It won't be anything spectacular, but it'll be a bit of fun.
That's awesome. So let's go back to the very beginning.
Yeah.
You know, before you were on Doctor Who, before you were acting, how did you start off acting, and how did you know this is what you wanted to do?
Well, you know, this is probably not a thing to say with children in the room, but I really became an actor because I failed at everything else. I joined a drama club when I was at school, but like every parent, I suppose my parents would tell me, you know, you've got to work hard at school, get your exams, and go to university. And sadly, I didn't work hard at school, failed most of my exams, and was left a bit high and dry. But at the time, you didn't need any qualifications at all to get into drama school, you just need to audition. So I auditioned for a well-known drama school in London and got in, and that was really it. And it's been I've been very fortunate, obviously, you know, I've done pretty well. But that's how I started. It was almost by default, shamefully. Shouldn't be saying that to children, really, but so work hard at school, go to university, and then become actors.
So, before you were the Doctor, you were also Tristan on All Creatures, Great and Small. How did it feel going from one iconic role to the next?
Well, I don't know how many of you were here yesterday afternoon, but I told this story. I got this part in All Creatures Great and Small. It was, I think, my third TV part, but it was a kind of what you call a breakthrough role. It turned out to be immensely popular. I was known then as a BBC newcomer. But they had it on my chair when I arrived on the set. He said Robert Hardy, Christopher Timothy, and then just said BBC newcomer. I worked on that show for 3 years with a man called John Nathan Turner, who then left to become the producer of Doctor Who. I didn't think any more about that. And then after we'd finished All Creatures Great and Small, he just rang me up one day and said, you know, Tom Baker's leaving Doctor Who, how would you feel about being the next Doctor? And it was a fairly dumbfounding thing to be asked, because I was the first Doctor who was young enough to have grown up with Doctor Who. So I'd watched it since I was about 11 or 12, and I loved it. And I'd often thought when I became an actor of getting a part in Doctor Who, never thinking that I'd actually be asked to be the Doctor. But it's an awesome responsibility in many ways, because you just don't know where to start. It's not like you're cast in Doctor Who to be different from the previous Doctors, not to be the same. So you don't really have anything to go on in terms of working out what your character is like, except that he was a 750-year-old Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey. The BBC took the steps of, I think the BBC did it officially, but there was a chat show, and they invited 12 children on to give their advice to me about how I should play the Doctor. They clearly thought I needed it. And one little boy said, I think you should be like Tristan, but brave. And that really was my blueprint for the part. It was odd, because you know, I was sort of known for Tristan, and that was probably a bit of a shock for many people to see me as the Doctor. And I was much younger. My initial response was I was too young. I couldn't say no, did I?
So you said you watched Doctor Who growing up. Who was your Doctor?
Well, initially, of course, William Hartnell, the first Doctor, and then probably more so Patrick Troughton. You know, I always thought I had the most difficult job, because he was the first regeneration.
Yeah.
No one had ever done that before, and you know, the idea was just introduced when William Hartnell didn't want to do the series anymore, and yet I think he just won everyone over so quickly, and he became my favourite Doctor.
So, next question is, I mean, how did it feel stepping into the shoes that Tom Baker left behind? Because, I mean, he made it almost institution. I mean, 7 years as the Doctor, he made it his own.
Yeah. And
then you're the newcomer. You have to come in and try to continue on from what he left.
Yes. This is interesting, because I'm asked this a lot over here. And it's a problem that I was really only aware of when I actually came over here and did my very first convention in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Anyone from Tulsa, Oklahoma? No. The Hotel Camelot. This was a convention at which I was asked. I did a press conference then, and the first question I was asked by somebody in this room of crowded people, press people, said, "Do you ever worry about being shot?" Because John Lennon, I think, had just been shot in New York. I thought that's a very comforting thing to say. I've never thought about that until now. You know, in Britain, Tom was the 4th Doctor, and I was the 5th. And it wasn't as if Tom had become the Doctor, he was simply the 4th Doctor. Over here, I know that most people had only seen Tom Baker, so it was much more of a problem to get this sort of young upstart suddenly playing the part. It was interesting that at the convention in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because I hadn't yet appeared as the Doctor, I was asked mostly questions about being Tristan in All Creatures Great and Small. What's it like to have your arm up a cow? The answer is it's warm. Also, I was asked a couple of questions. I was doing fine with the Tristan questions, you know, because I knew quite a lot about being Tristan. And then I was asked a question about some story that it wasn't even my story. I think it was a John Pertwee story. And I was being asked as if I was John Pertwee. And I realised there were at least a couple of people in the room who thought that we were all the same person. And I wasn't really the same person as William Arnold, Patrick Clough, and John Pertwee, and Tom Baker. But ultimately, I didn't let it worry me too much. You know, I just, you can't really be that affected by it. So my primary concern was just doing the programs to the best of my ability.
Do you have any fond moments as your time as a Doctor while you were actually filming for the BBC? Because we'll get to Big Finish in a second.
Okay. I'm actually filming Doctor Who. Oh, many happy memories. I remember particularly Colin Baker trying to kill me in a previous incarnation before he actually became a Doctor. I remember we were in this room and they had the brilliant idea that they would tie me to this sort of thing and they would release dry ice to completely envelop me and hold the shot. And I did point out to them that actually dry ice is carbon dioxide and that I couldn't breathe because there would be no oxygen. And so I held on for as long as I could and they just broke out saying, "You mad fools." I mean, I don't want to be horrible and serious, but I love doing it. But the other thing we had was, you know, we would rehearse in a rehearsal room for 2 weeks. And the people who were playing the sort of lumbering creatures, whichever they were, we would rehearse that and they would chase after us. Of course, when it got to the studio, they were encased in very heavy rubber, could not see where they were going. And if you had to be caught by them, you could walk away and escape. That was the problem. So you had to contrive this thing of going, "Oh, no!" Like that. Whereas you could really just go, "I'd say bye, I'm walking away now," and you won't be far. So it was fun things like that, but we made it all work. We had to get the laughing, because there's quite a lot of laughter when you're doing Doctor Who. I remember that the visitation with the pteroleptals was particularly, well, we just spent most of the time in the first 2 weeks laughing in the studio and in the rehearsal rooms, and then we had to get to the studio and get that out of the way, because I've always believed, although humour plays a very important part in Doctor Who, you've got to have the moments of danger there as well. They're vitally important. But yeah, I've got lots of happy memories. Dropping Nicola Bryant is another one. In Caves of Androzani, where I had to carry Nicola back to the TARDIS, because she was like, "This is to do with the celery as well, and you're being poisoned." And if you look very carefully, because I had to run up, they say, "Could you just walk the last 50 yards to the TARDIS carrying Nicola?" And of course, being filming, we had to do it about 5 times. And by the time we got it right on the 5th take, if you look very carefully, as I get to the TARDIS, my arms just give way and I drop her. She just falls out of shot. And then they had to wipe the scream as she hit the ground out of the...
That's what she overshadowed your death scene.
Oh yes, yeah. But I was going to come to that. But as I remember watching my death scene, my transformation into Colin Baker, and all I could really see was Nicola Bryant's cleavage. heaving away in the back of shot. Rather stole the scene, I thought.
Not a bad way to go, though.
No. Except I couldn't see it. I was busy on the floor acting. I think the cameraman just did a bit of that was more interesting than Peter's acting.
So, speaking of acting, you've played the Doctor on TV, but now you've also come and done some extremely wonderful audios for Big Finish.
Yeah.
How is the process any different? Is it the same? What's it like being recording instead of being recorded by film?
Well, it's of course on one level entirely different because we don't rehearse. As such, we simply get sent the scripts and we read them and then we just come in and do it. And we're in individual booths, so we're not acting opposite each other. And yet, in your head, you have this illusion that you are, still the Doctor running around in my lovely striped outfit, and we're all as young as we were then. And in a way, in a sort of magical radio way, it works, I think. And Colin always used to say that radio has the best scenery. In a way, it's right, because you conjure it up in your head. So they're very, very enjoyable. But please don't ask me too many questions about the stories, because we do them so quickly, they move out of my head almost immediately. And so whenever they get me, do an interview with me for the CD, I think, and say, so what did you think of the story we did a couple of weeks ago? I can't remember. I can't remember anything about it at all. But I know that they are very good. I mean, I'm very aware when we do them. They're fun things.
Yeah, I've enjoyed every single one I've heard from
and you try
all the
and
Doctors.
And you try and keep the pace up in your mind. I'm very keen on sort of keeping the pace of things up and rattling those words out as quickly as you can.
And it's like picking up where the show left off with you as the Doctor.
And they did do a fantastic job in that gap. When the series went off the air, there was really nothing for the fans around except for a Big Finish audio.
Yeah.
They really did do a fantastic job.
So let's jump. I was just joking about jumping. Let's jump ahead to because I have to talk about this time crash. How did it feel to be the first classic Doctor to cross over and meet at the time the New Who Doctor, Tennant?
Yeah.
Because I mean that was a huge big deal. Because I mean I remember watching it and I hear your voice and I see part of your arm and my jaw has literally dropped. And I'm just like, what? I mean, just over and over and over again. And it's just, and because you were my Doctor, it was amazing that, to get that connection to Doctor Who with you. What was that like? What was that experience like?
I suppose it was a great honour, really, because the series had come back and had become, when we did it, it was, I think, we always used to say it was sold to 39 different countries. It earned the BBC an enormous amount of money. But what it wasn't was a prestige BBC programme. And since its return, it's become a prestige programme, and I think a very successful programme and very well done. When Stephen Moffat took me aside and said, would you be interested in doing this little segment? I thought it was a great honour, really, and very good for the programme to connect the two things, because I mentioned yesterday that Stephen Moffat was a huge fan of the classic series of Doctor Who, and he certainly hasn't forgotten the connection, but I think it's quite important that the two are drawn together. We were renamed the classic series when the new series came back. And I suppose I was afraid that we'd sort of be entered into the kind of dustbin of history a bit, but I think that what Time Crash did for all the older Doctors was connect the two series, and it was great. It's a lovely script too, very clever.
So, what was it like working with John Nathan Turner on Doctor Who?
Well, what was it like? I liked John a lot. We didn't agree on everything by any means, but that was fine. It wasn't. When I say that, I don't mean to say we were shouting at each other and storming off. It's just that he would have his point of view, and I'd say, well, I don't think this is right. He was a fantastic producer at getting the show publicity. I mean, it's seen every week. There was a picture of one of us in the newspapers, and me holding a cricket bat on the front page of some national newspaper. And he did amazing things to elevate the profile of the programme. I think that he could have done more to get science fiction writers to write the stories, if I'm honest. I mean, we did have them from time to time, fans of the genre, but I don't think quite enough. I think too often we had writers who were good writers, don't get me wrong, but they would, you know, one week they would be writing a hospital drama or a police drama, and then they'd do a Doctor Who because they were commissioned. And I think that's the one thing that's the major thing that's changed with the new series, is that now they really do look for, because they are themselves science fiction fans, to write the series, and that can't be anything but good for the series. But we got on very well, but with you know, disagreements about various things. For example, he he had this idea. The reason that Janet is an air stewardess is because he had this idea that he wanted to film the story in Australia, and thought that if he made one of the characters an air stewardess, we would get cheap flights on Qantas to fly us to Australia, and that never worked out. And then he had the idea that, and I tried to fight him on this, because you know, having done sort of conventions, he thought a really good idea would be to get an American companion. When Janet and Sarah left, and he thought, let's get an American companion, because that will make it more popular in America. And I said, I think that what the American audiences like, American fans like, is the fact that it's British. You know, there's plenty of American product for the Americans to like, but I think what they like about Doctor Who is it's slightly quirky, off the wall. And I don't think it'll improve the popularity by having an American companion, especially if she isn't actually American. I lost the battle, as I always was going to lose the battle, because he was the boss, you know. But I think it was a slight sort of, it was a populist move rather than really a good move for the series. But having said that, you know, we got on very well, you know, socially, and indeed we did just discuss things and agree to disagree, if you like.
Nice. What was it like, you know, working with all the other doctors, first in like the 5 doctors and then in Dimensions in Time? I mean, because you were lucky enough to work with so many of them.
Yes. Well, of course, the 5 doctors I loved. I would have loved to have done more stuff with John and Patrick, but John Nathan Turner's fear was that there would be so many egos flying around on the set. We would be storming off in different directions back to our trailers and refuse to come out. In fact, you know, we've always, through I suppose conventions where we know each other from. I worked with Patrick Troughton anyway, but you know, we knew each other very well, and there isn't a real rivalry. I mean, we give each other a hard time about various things, just out of a kind of fun thing to do. But we've always got on very well, I think, and it would have been nice to actually have more interplay between the doctors than there was. But apart from that, it was a great thrill.
So also speaking of all the actors that have played the Doctor, you said yesterday that you had a story about another film that you're in called The Arizona Solution. And you said you had a story that I'm dying to hear.
It's a very silly story, except that as we went along, originally John Pertwee wasn't in it. Then they decided, oh, because we've got other people in it, we'll get John Pertwee in. So they went away and they wrote this part for John Pertwee and then sent him the script. And he turned up a week later, because he was getting older by then, not having learned any of the lines. So what you don't see, there's one scene where he's talking to me, and what you don't see out of shot is that I've got an idiot board in front of me with all the words written on, and I'm going like this. So he's looking at me, he's just looking at all the words. So it's not really much of a story, except that it was just very funny at the time. Because then, of course, he said, couldn't you get a bit closer, Peter? Closer. So I go, okay. So I never really I only ever got to do the scene with him when the camera was pointing at me, because I couldn't see him, you see. So we were talking to each other, and I'm saying my lines behind this big board. That's all. It was a bit chaotic. It was what they call now guerrilla filming.
Yes.
So you don't get permission for anything. Normally, if you do something for BBC, you have a very elaborate process. You have to apply to the council for a permit. You have to get informed the police you're going to be filming. Whereas guerrilla filming is just you take a camera into the middle of the street and you just start filming and hope that the authorities don't turn up and tell you to go home. Get out of here.
That actually explains a lot.
Yeah.
Watching Arizona Solution. How does it feel to have numerous action figures of yourself? And do you ever play with them?
Of course. We're always having little conversations between them. Yeah, fine, funny enough, my daughter's little girl, David and George's little girl, Olive, used to carry around a little model of David, which I thought was very sweet until one day she bit his head off. I think I'm a favourite doctor.
I like her response. It's priceless.
Yes, actually, the headless figure of David might be priceless.
I paid really good money for that.
So I actually have one more question for you before we actually open up to the audience, because I figured you guys might want to ask them a few questions yourself. I guess not. They didn't say anything. No cheering. Okay. So okay, this is one that. What is a question you have never been asked but would love to answer?
How would I know that? I've no idea about that. Let me have to think about it. I come back to one at the end. That's too difficult for me.
Okay, so we're going to keep this kind of civil. Raise your hand, and I'll try to keep you guys in order. As and Drew, will you help me keep an eye on people so they can ask Davison a question here? And guy in back.
Sorry to start off with kind of a serious one, but with the classic Who, I watched it when I was 10. Some of it was scary, no big deal. I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and she loves the current series, but a lot of it she can't actually watch because of the more adult themes. How do you feel about that? About the classic was so innocent compared to what's out there now?
Could you be say more specific about what you mean by the adult themes? You just mean the level of violence, or the?
Not really that. More of the. Well, I didn't want to say with the children here, but and not really specifics, but more of the doctor. For example, the doctor would have never in the classics had any sort of affair with a companion.
No, I'm not sure he did have an affair with anyone. Did he in this new series? I mean, there was a kind of flirtation there, I think. So.
Yes, but not well. I mean,
no, you're right. You're right about that. There was a kind of innocence, but
things like the vampires of Venus, or Venice, things like that. Just stuff that my daughter was 8 when it came out.
Yes.
And it's like, no, don't watch that episode. Skip that.
Right.
The Queen and the, I can't remember the name of the episode, Queen and the Wasp with the Unicorn and the Wasp. That's it. I didn't want to get into that conversation.
Right.
The people who see the episode might know about one relationship.
Right. I'm not probably as conversant with that. I've seen it certainly, but as you probably are. I think it's a difficult one. I mean, in my day, it was innocent to the point of absurdity. I couldn't put my arm around a female companion, but I could around Adric. I could quite happily to Adric. But no. And then bizarrely, but then you had a strange and bizarre contradiction in that I remember at the end of my first season, so I think one person wrote in to the Doctor Who and said, what's happened with the Doctor Who companions? We used to have a leader walking around in a fur bikini, and why are they covered up from head to foot? And then overnight there was a sort of, for the second season, both the companions lost nearly all their clothes. I mean, Janet was suddenly walking around in a sort of boob tube, and Sarah got hot one day and took off her. I mean, it was a bit odd. I like the innocence of it. I think you may well be right. I don't know if that line was crossed, but there's sometimes you can have a thing where it kind of goes over kids' heads. There is another side to it, and I don't know. Did your children actually ever say to you what's going on here? Because I mean, there's a point at which you can do something and it's okay because maybe we get it, but the kids don't. It's not right in your face, and they don't need to ask questions because they just accept it for what it is. But there's another way in which if they go, "Hey, Dad, why is he doing that?" I don't know if that happened in those stories because I'm not quite as conversant with them as they should be. It hasn't worried me. I'd have thought. I'm surprised that the violence level's always been pretty high in the stories.
This is America. We don't care about that.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, I don't know. You may well be right. I didn't pick up on it, and maybe my children are just a bit too old for me to be worried about that, or maybe they're just a bit too knowledgeable. Frighteningly, I don't know.
Winnie the Bow tie?
Can I give you a hug?
Are you going to start a trend? Okay, here we go. Okay. Oh, this isn't too bad, is it?
Is there any particular reason why the BBC is, as far as the classic series is concerned, why they're only releasing stories instead of releasing entire series outside of just the money option?
I don't know. I really don't know about that. I'm surprised they haven't released the entire set, except I suppose it's an ongoing process. You know, they don't want to wait until they've done the commentaries and the additional footage for every single story before they assemble them into a box set. And of course, once they have done that, they very cleverly then start releasing them again in a slightly different form, with maybe a slightly different bit of footage. I don't know. So I think it's just that they don't having. You know, I know they work on one particular story at a time, and so having finished that, I think they just think, let's release this, rather than sit on it until. I'm sure that at a future point they will release each Doctor in the full set, and hopefully you'll buy them all again. And unfortunately, we live in that kind of world where that's the kind of thing these companies do, and the BBC sadly are no exception.
I'll say it would make it easier on me as a guy who is only 30 DVDs away from having a full set of everything. Yes. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Have you seen every episode that ever aired?
Of Doctor Who?
Yes.
I think I haven't seen a couple of the Chris Eccleston ones because I think I can't remember what I was doing. I was either out of the country or I was working in theatre. I've seen all the others, yes. I've sat there faithfully with my children. Now, but before the series came back, my eldest boy is now 13. He was just old enough for me to sit him down and show him me as the Doctor. So I just thought maybe he might really like them. You know, you're looking around for things for your child to watch. So he knew about the Doctor before it ever came back as the series, and he would tell his friends about Doctor Who, and they'd go, "What? What's that?" And then it came back, of course, and it became immensely popular. And I went from being his favourite Doctor to being somewhere down the list. I was pretty unceremoniously dumped shortly after the first episode went out.
You had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the season Doctor before you took over, I grew up with that Doctor.
Right.
And then
Tom Baker.
every episode he had this thing where he pulled out the jelly belly.
Yes.
When he got in trouble, oh, have a jelly belly.
Yes.
You only did it in your season, I only saw it like 3 or 4 times, and then after you, none of the other doctors kind of carried that on, they just kind of dropped it and said, well, we ain't doing that no more.
No, I don't know that I ever did it at all, did I? I might have done it.
I think you did it in the first season one time.
Yeah, right, I might have had it when I was in Tom's costume at that point, the first story. And I undid his scarf and dumped his jelly baby. I think it was just something that was peculiar to Tom, and I think it would have felt a bit odd if I just carried it on. I think sometimes, I mentioned this moment yesterday, I think sometimes, although I was a great fan of Tom Baker's period when Douglas Adams was the script editor, I was a great fan of it, but I think sometimes it just went a little too far in terms of the point at which he's in grave danger and he's handing out jelly babies. But generally I was a great fan of it. But I think, you know, that John Nathan Turner was not a fan of it. That's one thing that we had a problem with. He wanted to remove all those, what he would consider undergraduate humour from the Doctor. I didn't agree with him, really, but that was his thing. So I think he probably put the kibosh on jelly babies and the scarf.
Yeah. You over there. Get somebody on this side. Yeah, you.
Who's your favorite doctor besides like the characters?
Besides,
Like besides yourself.
oh, besides myself. I don't think I'd even be on the list. Okay. I would say my favourite doctor when I was growing up would be Patrick Troughton. I think also David Tennant did a fantastic job. I might be considered to be biased there, but I still think I did a fantastic job. And I think everyone's been really good. Matt Smith is doing a great job too. But in a way, I think there was something about, you know, in a way it was a fulfilling of David Tennant's dream to play that part. You know, he was he watched it growing up. Well, he watched me growing up. Yeah. He watched it growing up, and I think he just thought one day I'm going to play the Doctor. And there's just something so magical about him actually then achieving that, and I think that came over in his performance. I remember when he came out. I remember that. I think the best moment when he, after that first story, you know, when he's basically virtually comatose for most of it, and then when he finally comes out of the TARDIS, there's just something magical about that moment. The way he does that, I think, is summed up in his Doctor.
Green,
All right.
very patient.
As a fan of the show, who are your favorite companions?
My favourite companions. I think that there was. Okay, I'll be completely honest about this. I have obviously great loyalty to my companions. I don't think they ever got the companions right until Rose. Honestly, I think they struggled. They really did struggle, and John Nathan Turner did his best. He had the idea that he wanted to make companions more interesting, which was the right thought process. He just, I think, went about it in the wrong way. You know, so I had Turlo, who was interesting because he was trying to kill me. Janet Tegan, who was interesting because she didn't want to be there. And I think what they did with Rose, and the answer was very simple: you just write a good part for the companion. And I think that's what they got right with Rose. You know, there's an argument which says that actually Rose was the more important character in that first season of Doctor Who when it came back, because she was kind of the audience in a way, absolutely. And it was a story that was told almost from her point of view. And it was brilliantly written and brilliantly realised, I think. So if I'm honest, she's when they got it right. And that was the problem they've been struggling with for a long time. I'm getting feedback. Sorry.
Goggles.
What was your response to Don't Blink?
To Don't Blink?
Yeah.
The Stephen Moffat? Do you mean
The Weeping Angels.
Weeping Angels, yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic. You know, Stephen Moffat has this idea that the most terrifying things are the things that sort of almost like everyday things. A statue you might see of a blissfully beautiful angel is actually the most terrifying thing you can find. And it's just a marvellous idea, I think. And the whole lot, oh, thank you very much. I'm sounding croaky. And then he came up, he told me about the other idea before it came out, you know, that he had this idea that he thought, how can I crack in the wall? Isn't that scary? Just a crack in the wall. And of course then he wrote that into the story. I think it was so simple, and yet just so scary.
Gray shirt in the middle, dependent.
How did you feel the first time you were put on, you know, your doctor suit, the celery, and, you know, croquets? How did you feel? Did you feel silly? Did you feel brave? How did you feel?
Brave. Well, you know, I had the idea that John wanted something eccentric, slightly eccentric and a younger feel to it. So I suggested, how about basing the outfit on a cricketing outfit? It wasn't quite what I got, because it was more of a designer thing, the thing I got. It had the cricket jumper, and the trousers were sort of meant to be like Victorian. They never really actually wore those clothes, but that was the idea behind it. It was a tiny bit, before I got into it, a bit too designer for me, you know, sort of a designer thing. Rather than the idea that the Doctor goes into this room and goes, oh, I'll wear that, and I'll wear that, and I'll wear that, which is how I envisaged you know, it to work. But having said that, it was incredibly comfortable, and I just felt it's something. You know, as an actor, I hate costume changes, and so the idea that I was just going to be wearing this in going from one scene to another, was fantastic. I never had to change. Everyone else was going, okay, go change for scene 3, and I don't know, I'm in this outfit, that's me. So no, I was very comfortable in it. I thought it was a nice outfit, and I love the idea, which we kind of lost as we went along, the idea that I had all these things in my pocket, just endless things like cricket balls and string and all sorts of stuff. We kind of lost that along the way, but you know, I enjoyed it. I did feel, I suppose I just felt kind of cool. You know, you're the doctor. This is my outfit.
You've been waiting right there.
Sorry for the repeat question. Can I have a hug too?
Okay.
Okay, can we just line up?
Okay. Get the next question.
Yes. Let's get somebody. Yes.
I painted a TARDIS on my nails for you.
Yeah. Hi.
Would you prefer 10th Doctor and Rose get together or the 9th Doctor?
For the 10th Doctor and Rose get together, for the 9th Doctor and Rose get together.
Let's face it, it can't be the 10th Doctor, can it? I mean, come on, he's taken. There was something though. I mean, that was, I suppose, in a way, that was the love story, that wasn't it? That was the 10th Doctor, if I'm honest. So, I suppose Rose ended up with the Doctor that wasn't a Doctor, didn't she? Yeah. So I think she should be happy with the Doctor that's not the Doctor, and my daughter can have the Doctor that is the Doctor. So.
You, sir.
Of the two iconic Doctor Who villains, monsters, Daleks or Cybermen, which one did you prefer the most?
You know, I was always partial, I have to say, to the Cybermen. And indeed, I liked, not that they're very good as well, obviously, but I kind of liked my incarnation of the Cybermen. What we're doing. Careful with that. They're very fragile, you know, they're not like... because they were, you know, when they started out, I don't know if you've ever seen the original Cybermen, they had this sort of strange cloth face and like a car headlamp on their heads. And they spoke in this very strange voice, which wasn't at all threatening really, but in a way it was. It was sort of like, we are the Cybermen, we have come to destroy you. But they were kind of cool as well. But then when they came back in my time, I kind of liked the design of it, because you could just see that mouth moving in the bottom part of the plastic thing, so you knew there was some kind of being inside there. You know, they're not machines; they're human beings inside it. And that's, I thought, was very scary. And David Banks, who played our head Cyberman, was fantastic.
You've been waiting patiently, the one in the brown shirt.
When you first met David Tennant, did he ever geek out on you, and if so, to what degree?
Well, funnily enough, he did geek out on me, but I couldn't remember, you see, because I told this story yesterday, but I'm going to repeat it. I worked with him briefly on Mrs. Bradley Mysteries, which was round about, I suppose about 2000 or something like that. I can't remember that year. And then when it was announced that he was the Doctor, he was going to become the Doctor, I met up with a friend of mine who I'd worked with on a play in the early 90s. And she said to me, what about David Tennant then becoming the Doctor? I said, yeah, no, it'll be good. And she said, yeah, but you know, he was that bloke. And I said, what bloke? She said, you know, we were sitting in the pub in 1991, and this bloke came up to us and said, would you mind if I join you? We were the cast of the show, we were rehearsing a show, and there were about 8 or 9 of us sitting around a table, and this bloke came up and said, would you mind if I just join you? And we went, no, that's fine. Sat down there, and I remember this happening, and she said, no, that was David Tennant. I had no memory of it at all. But I thought, no, you can't be right. And I said to David, we met before, did you ever come and, did we meet in a pub in 1991? He said, oh yeah, we did actually. But he was a fan of the programme, that was the thing, you know, so why wouldn't he do that? I mean, I just wish I'd known. You know, you're going to be Doctor Who one day.
Well, I don't feel as bad now as from yesterday.
You're going to be Doctor Who one day.
Yes!
turn out to be true, you never know.
There's only 2 slots left.
Yes, don't do that.
Of all the monsters that the doctors fought, which one would you like to see reimagined?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. Well, I suppose a couple of them have been, haven't they? But what of the ones? I always had I did have a sort of fondness for the pteroleptals. They only ever really appeared in the Visitation. They weren't one of the regular. But they, they did suffer from not being able to move. And I just thought if they were reimagined, maybe they could actually become quite frightening creatures. Unfortunately, they had to do this one. And they're ridiculously small arms. Not really practical at all. But I did think that they had potential, and I think they could be reimagined very well.
Yeah,
I'm actually a big fan of All Creatures Great and Small. So the question that I wanted to ask was, from the time mashup one, with the I Can Save the World with a Bit of String, there was that episode and the story from the book with the Siegfried saving the cow with a bit of string, with the coat.
You're going to tax my memory now. Did we do that, or is that from the book?
Yeah.
We did do the story, did we?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I think it was in season 3. He didn't actually save a cow with a piece of string. He's just doing the yelling. Get me a piece of string, get me a piece of string.
Oh, yes, I think I do.
And it was just to tie his coat down so
yes,
he could examine the cow. I was wondering if that was intentional or if that was
no,
just
I think
me
that
being
was purely.
a gigantic.
I think that was purely Robert Hardy, unless Robert Hardy was doing it. I think he probably. I think he would put in these wonderful little bits.
It was in the book.
Oh, it was in the book. All right.
I was wondering if that was intentional on a writer's part, putting it in Doctor Who.
I've never heard that it was, but it might. I'm not aware that you'd have to find out if the person who wrote that story was a fan of All Creatures Great and Small. It might be possible.
Yeah, because I know.
Well, it's Robert. It's Stephen Moffat. Yes, of course. Yeah. I'm not. He's never mentioned it to me, and I'm going to ask him. Hang on, where's my phone?
It's you.
What's your favorite episode of Doctor Who?
My favourite of mine or of anybody's?
Of all of them.
And yours, that's well.
Doctor's daughter.
The Doctor's daughter. No, I think oh gosh, what's it? I think a fantastic story was of the new series. It was actually not David's story. It was Stephen Moffat wrote it. In the first season. What's it called? The second one. Yes, that one. The Child. Yeah. I thought that was in fact, I think that came. There was this vote. I don't know exactly who voted, but I got the award of the best Doctor Who story ever, which was actually won by Caves of Androzani. But that story was second, and Stephen Moffat was absolutely furious.
Yes.
One of my favorite episodes of yours was the snake dance. And Tomorrow was one of my favorite villains. Technically, do you think that Tomorrow was vanquished from Tegan at the end of that show? Was it really a truth gone?
Well, I think we did a big finish, or it did pop back, didn't it? A big finish story, I think. So no, is the answer. I did, going back to those, when I was mentioning earlier about the stories, I did like those stories. I thought they were written, a perfect example of, we should have had more stories like that. Right. Written by someone who just had a really great idea and was, passionate about it. But no, I think it does turn up, at least if you listen to the Big Finish audios, I think she gets it again. She catches it again, I think.
In the back? Yes.
Okay, I want to know how you felt about the Doctor and his marriage to River.
The Doctor and his marriage to
River Song?
Well, I'm, to be honest with you, slightly baffled. Because I've never been quite able to work it out. I'm going to have mine maybe as complex as Stephen's, but the whole thing is that I think when they first met, they said we have got married or something. That's right, wasn't it? And then it didn't. Well, my children informed me that it doesn't quite make sense. And now, I have to. There's a point at which Douglas Adams once told me that he said the secret about Doctor Who is that you have to make it simple enough for the adults to understand and complicated enough to hold the children's attention. And I think now I've slipped over into the adult thing, so I have to now, I find myself turning to my 11-year-old and going, what's going on? What's happening? And they funnily enough, were talking about, I was always slightly baffled by it. I was thinking it was going to be plainer when, maybe even happen in David's time as the Doctor. But I got a bit confused with the River Song bit.
Pregnant with River in the TARDIS,
Yeah.
that's why she can be a doctor.
Do you know, you really need Stephen Moffat here to pin him down on this because it's very complicated. This whole thing of their time things going in opposite directions. I wish I was qualified to answer it, but if I'm honest, I am a bit baffled by it. Maybe we haven't got to the end of the whole process yet. Maybe she's still
Yes, you.
Okay, me?
Yeah, you.
Out of all the doctors, besides yours, whose style is your favorite? Like Matt Smith's bow tie or Tennant's chucks?
Tennant's what?
Taylor's.
Chucks.
His trainers.
His trainers, fine. You young people who come up with all these. I suppose I did. This is true, actually. I think I probably like David's style because it was. I suppose in a way it's more like I would imagine mine to have been if I'd had all those special effects and and all that time. And I think we both had similarities about us. I mentioned yesterday when we did Time Crash. They wrote it, I think Stephen wrote it as a sort of 15-minute thing, and I think it lasted 9 minutes and 56 seconds because we both went at it with such a speed that they had no idea that it was going to be done that quickly. And so I like that kind of thing of, he kind of nicked my thing of changing direction as well. This thing of going this way and then going the other way. And when I say run, run! Yeah, as well. But I know I did think he was brilliant, and I think probably like that style. Yeah.
Yes.
I was wondering, outside of the show, how much do all of the previous doctors and companions actually get together and interact?
I don't think, I think it wouldn't be right to say that we got together socially just for the sake of being social. But whenever we see each other at either a convention or in the process of doing something, whether it be Big Finish or whatever, there's an awful lot of sort of just chatting going on. Various things. So, but I don't know that we get together socially. We did a bit more when I just after I left the Doctor the part and Colin became the Doctor because we both had daughters and they were in the same class at the same school. So we did see them. We did see Colin. So I saw Colin socially then, and of course I see David. Socially, quite often. But that's about it. We don't sort of get together and have a great reunion. I do see Janet quite a lot, the social.
Can I just ask a follow-up? How did your daughter and how did that end up happening?
With Georgia and David.
Yeah.
What happened was she went for a part. She became an actress, and she went for a part in Doctor Who, and they said to her. We'd offer you this part in this particular Doctor Who story. They said, but we've got another story coming up further down the line, which we think would be even more perfect for if you wouldn't mind hanging on for 3 months. And so she said, oh, well, yeah, maybe I should do that, because obviously it's a much better part. As it turned out, I think it was mainly because the story was called The Doctor's Daughter. And they thought, there's a kind of really good connection. And so she did The Doctor's Daughter, and they obviously met each other then. But they didn't start going out there, not until I would say probably 4 or 5 months after that, because they went. I was in a show called Spamalot in London, and they turned up. That's all I have to say when I get around the board. Fantastic! I was in Spamalot. which was great. It was the closest I'll ever be to being in Monty Python. And they came, she said, "I will come to see you in Spamalot tonight. I'm bringing someone." And then she turned up with Davey. I said, well, what's going on? She said, nothing, no, we're just friends. Well, to this day, I don't know quite if she was lying to her. But I think she was. I think there was nothing going on. And then after a long, it took a long time to get around to it. He's a very respectable boy. His father, was the head of the Church of Scotland, so he does things the right way. And then after a few months, he finally got around to going, "Oh, would you like to go out with me?" Which she could not believe, but she said, "Well, he could have anyone, couldn't he? What's going on?" But he was actually quite shy. She's quite sweet. And yeah, so that's how it happened, really. And then now they've got a little girl, and he's adopted. My daughter, she had a little boy before, and now they're one big happy family.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and this gentleman has been waiting patiently over here.
Okay, I hear it a lot online, different ideas thrown around, usually with your daughter's name involved. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the idea that people are throwing around about maybe a gender change one of these days for the doctor?
It's always, every time there's a new doctor this comes up, I don't know, I don't think it'll ever happen. It throws up all sorts of problems, doesn't it, gender change? And I mean, I like the idea, for example, that theoretically, my daughter is flying around the universe somewhere, a kind of almost fully formed Time Lord. Maybe they should just bring her back.
Yes.
I don't know about the gender change thing. I know it's always something they throw up as a sort of rumour to distract the thing. And the Daily Mail, pain in the bottom newspaper in Britain, always starts printing out, "The new doctor could be a woman." But it never has turned out that way. And somehow, I don't know, I just think it throws up all sorts of things on the regeneration. You suddenly change sex. I think it's a rather weird thing. I don't know that it'll ever happen.
So
I'd like to see them get slightly older again now.
Yeah.
I think otherwise, it's where we're going to end up.
Okay,
On the other hand, I do have a little dynasty, so maybe that's a bad idea. I think I've got several sons and grandsons who are lining up to be the doctors. So yeah, I think yes, it's going to be like North Korea. Yeah. The doctors, Kim Jong-il. The children automatically become the next doctor.
So I'd like to thank you and all of you for coming out for the guest of honor interview with Peter Davison. I think he's heading shortly to the dealer's room to sign stuff, if you guys want, stuff signed. And then tomorrow we will be showing the Arizona Solution if you've never seen it at 1 o'clock. Is that right? Is it 1 o'clock, Arizona?
Arizona is
Yes, if you've never seen it, it is a treat.
1 o'clock Sunday.
That's irony, by the way.
Yes. So let's have a huge round of applause.